All right, we're on. I can't believe it. Finally, the first episode of Giant Conversations. And I'm tickled this is going to happen. I'm Harinam Singh Khalsa, and I have with me my good buddy Kevin Weldon. He's a lot funnier than I am. I'm a lot more boring than he is. So why don't I just let him get things rolling and say whatever he needs to say, and we'll take off on our maiden voyage of Giant Conversations.
Yeah. So thank you for the opportunity, Harinam. Harinam's kind of world famous in uh, in certain parts, South America, uh, uh, South Asia. Uh, I'm only famous on Long Island and Turkey for the most part, but uh, this show's called Giant Conversations, and of course, it stems out of our mutual love of the New York Giants, and that's what brought us together initially, and we'll talk more about that. But beyond that, uh, we we have very diverse backgrounds, interests, and things that we both find interesting and important to us. And this isn't just a jock show. Okay, we're going to be talking human condition. We're going to be talking other items, but it is the love of the Giants that brought us together. And just to give you a little bit of the background, I grew up on Long Island, and you know uh, the Giants were a big part of my nascent period as a youth, and I can remember uh, when I was a little kid, maybe 5 years old. Every Sunday, I'd be watching the Giant games with my father, and uh, back in those days, the home games weren't shown on in the local network.
So what year
So
was that? What? So
I guess 67.
really?
That's
Okay.
shortly after,
Oh.
67, 60, shortly after I stopped pooping my pants. I mean, I was just a little kid for the most part. And I remember my father had to go up on the roof in our house in Long Island and switch the antenna. And I would stand down below, and the reason he did it, 'cause he was trying to pick up the signal from the Connecticut affiliate. And I'd be watching the TV, and he'd be turning, and then there'd be a ghost image, and then it could be something recognizable, and I would yell, "Dad, Dad, we got it!" And he'd come downstairs, and we'd watch the games together. A big part of my relationship with my father throughout our time together. And that was the beginning of my love for the Giants. And I also like other sports, but I don't follow. I I consume the Giants. I follow other sports more casually, but the Giants are the Giants are constitute the overwhelming majority of my sports attention. And just to give you one other quick example, I remember in 1969 when the Mets were in the World Series, and it was a Sunday. I think it was the first game of the World Series in 1969. So I was like in second grade or something. And the Giant game was on the same time as the Mets game in the World Series. And we only had one TV. And my parents and my other siblings wanted to watch the Met game. And I was desperately wanting to watch the Giant game. Yeah, I mean, I like the Mets, but it was the Giants. And I was outvoted, and I took off crying. Literally, I was crying because I wanted to watch the game. And so that's kind of the a basic short summary of how I got involved with the Giants. And I'll let Harinam talk for a minute, but we'll talk about how we got involved with each other, as we move on.
Well, unlike Kevin, I didn't have any nascent moments when I was when I was younger. He has a bigger vocabulary. I have a big vocabulary, but he has a slightly bigger vocabulary than me. I don't recall using nascent before, so I maybe it's because it didn't exist in my childhood. There was no nascency, as you said. So, and yeah, a little bit about my background with the Giants because that's what we're going to. I mean, that's the foundation of what we're going to be. We're going to be doing other stuff, but in the end, the foundation of this is the New York Football Giants. And I have to admit, just starting to talk about that, actually, I'm getting a little emotional talking about this because a lot of stuff's happened recently, even with the Giants, and even some of the stuff Kevin was saying about his relationship with his dad, because um, it's kind of really, I mean, without getting into my personal psychology and my personal background and my family relations, I'm sure that others can relate to this, is that I had kind of um, a kind of an on and off, hot and cold relationship with my dad without getting into a lot of it. And back in that generation, fathers sometimes weren't as present as they are now. And so when I think back of it, the only really unconditional thing me and my father had from childhood all the way to the day he died were the New York Football Giants. There was no, we had conflicts about all kinds of other things, but we had no conflict when it came Sundays in the fall that it was always about the Giants. And, Kevin's actually heard this story because we'll talk later. I mean, we have season tickets together now, but actually, those season tickets were actually started in 1964 because I actually started following my first Giant game was actually the 1959 championship game between the Giants and the Colts on television. And that's actually the day I became a Giant fan because I saw that game. And even though I didn't know anything about football and I didn't even know what the team was, I was heartbroken that they lost, but I didn't understand why I was heartbroken. And from 19 and then 1960, I started reading about the games in the New York Times because the home games weren't on television. And starting in 1961, when I was 9 years old, uh, I have not missed a Giant game that I had access to since 1961. And so I've either been in person, seen on TV, or listened on the radio, even on a ham radio, no matter where I was in the world. I haven't missed a Giant game since 1961. I'm sure I don't have a lot of company of people still on the planet. And in 1964, I was in 63, 64. I was like 11, 12 years old. And I had a serious medical condition. My feet, I was like pigeon toed. I almost could trip over my own feet. My body was genetically or out of line. And my parents wanted to do something about it. And my father knew how much I loved the Giants, but the doctors said that they were going to have to break my legs and reset my legs, and there would be a long recovery, and they couldn't guarantee anything. And my dad knew that the only thing in life that I really loved so much that I'd do anything for were the New York Giants. So my father actually made a proposition to me that if I could straighten my own feet out, in 6 months he would get Giant season tickets. And they couldn't believe it, but I actually willed my legs to walk straight without braces, just in the hope that I'd have Giants. So it's some emotional, even talking about these things. And then basically that's, I mean, a lot of things have come and gone in my life. I've had a very interesting life, and we'll talk about all those things in the episodes too about life in general. But the one constant in my life has always been the New York Giants. And a lot of memories along the way, a lot of funny stories along the way. And, Kevin will get into how we met, which was around the Giants. But um, even this last season, where we're talking actually now, a couple days after John Harbaugh was hired by the Giants, and Kevin knows me, and I'm sure a lot of you who are Giant fans would feel the same way. This has probably been the worst year for me of ever following the Giants since 1959. In that I just got so frustrated that um, it just affected my day, and it got to the point, and Kevin's talked about this, and I'm sure some of you would agree that this year I found myself watching the games and not even caring, which is worse than actually being pissed off. I was worse than pissed off. I didn't care. And and then I heard that they hired this coach. Now, I don't know what's going to happen with this coach, but just the hope of having Sundays being important again to me, I found myself actually feeling hope for the first time in a long time, and I actually really liked that feeling. And I was even wearing my Giant jerseys this week and all that. But it was emotional. And then last night on YouTube, I happened to trip over a documentary on called The Duke. It was about Wellington Mara. In fact, me and Kevin, we just talking about that yesterday. We actually spoke with we got to meet Wellington Mara many years ago, and I was at Wellington Mara's funeral in 2005, and I actually saw the game a couple of days before then when Tiki Barber actually had one of the great, and the Giants beat the Redskins, I think 34 to nothing or 36 to nothing. It was one of the best games the Giants ever played in my lifetime, and they beat a good Redskin team. And I've never experienced anything quite like that either. And I watched this documentary, and I don't want to cry on my own podcast, but it was it was very emotional, and it made me proud to follow this team. It made me, and I realized how many friendships, including people like Kevin, that I've gained through this. So, yeah, that's a little my Giant background. So, yeah, people know where to find me on Sundays in the fall.
Yeah, I mean, there's no shame in it being emotional. The male of the species isn't always emotionally available. So any way you could connect to your father, it's easy to connect to your mother, right? I mean, it just is. I mean, thank God there's women in the world, but it's much harder to connect with your father, and that was our connection. And like you said, we had our differences, uh, growing up, but then there was always the Giants, and there weren't significant differences. I mean, you know, I I had, just a fantastic childhood where I grew up, and very privileged in that I wasn't from wealth, but very privileged in terms of the support I had, and so on and so forth. But after I stopped pooping my pants and crying, I went to junior high school and high school, and I actually played. I played football in junior high school and high school. Although I'm 6'6", it doesn't look like it because I'm sitting down. But you know, uh, in high school I was like 6'6" and 145 pounds. I looked like olive oil, and wasn't exactly popular with the ladies. Uh, so that's probably where some of my sense of humor was developed, because everybody was going to the prom and whatever, and I I was taking protein drinks that my mother bought me so I could put on weight to look like a human. But anyway, I loved the game. You know, uh, I loved playing. I wasn't great at it, partially because of my physical condition. But I really loved the game. Followed the Giants. Then I went to college, and I was in college for 5 years, and somehow I got a degree in physics. But during my college years, I didn't watch football at all. I mean, I don't know what I was doing during my college years. I don't even remember my college years. I know I got out and I had a degree. That's whatever, but I mean, it was a lot of fun. I can tell you that. But we didn't have a TV. It was this a different part of your life, you know. I mean, it's you know, I know the college experience beyond, getting some credential was invaluable to me because I just met people with different opinions, completely different opinions that I've ever had in my life, and it just kind of broadens you in terms of of what's going on in the world, way people think. But that's not either here nor there, And I got a job with Intel, the semiconductor company, and I moved to Portland, Oregon, because that's where Intel was, and my brother was out there at the time. And I once I was out of college, I became interested in football again. The only problem was I lived in Portland, Oregon. So all I ever saw were the Seahawks and the 49ers for the most part. And to this day, I wouldn't say I can't stand those teams. That's not fair. But I resented them at the time. So, my mother and my friends and my father used to, tape games, VHS tapes, and send them to me in the mail. And I would hope to watch them before the following Sunday, you know. Uh, and I would call my friends and get live updates. And this went on for 5 or 6 years. And then I heard, or somebody told me that at Champion Sports Bar in the Marriott in downtown Portland, they had two satellite dishes, and they had showed two out of market games every Sunday. I'm like, wow, that's interesting. So I called them one Sunday. I said, and the Giants are playing the Cowboys, and I said, do you happen to have the Giant Cowboy game on? They said, yeah, we got that game on. I said, holy macaroni! I got in my car, rushed down to the Marriott, walked in, and I saw two things. Two things that were very important to me. The first was I saw the Giants playing the Cowboys live, which I hadn't seen in 6 years, other than when I went back to New York and went to the games and so on. And the other thing I saw was an odd-looking cat with a turban and a beard. The man you see next to you, and he was wearing a Giant shirt. And I just sat down, and I was naive at the time. I really haven't traveled. It wasn't particularly well read, So I was taken aback by Harinam's appearance, but that lasted about one quarter because as we started to get more and more into the game, his appearance became largely irrelevant. And that was the seed that started a friendship, and that was probably 1988, I would guess. And we've been pretty tight friends since then. So there you have the Giants. Not only a big part of my life with my father and many other friends, but also with Harinam, meeting him and again, part of the learning process that started in college, where you learn about alternative ideas, alternative ways of life, different places in the world you wouldn't have considered, different philosophical points of view that were all of tremendous interest to me. But while I was in college, I wasn't particularly interested in accruing knowledge. Uh, but somehow again, I got out. But since then, I'm not obsessed by it, but it's a big part of my life. Continuing to learn, continuing to have new experiences, which we'll get into uh, as part of the broadcast. I'll just say one other thing, and turn it back over to Harinam, is that I when the games are on TV, he would invite me over to his house and we'd watch the games. And I remember watching the 1990 NFC Championship game against San Francisco, which was my favorite sporting event of my life. I mean, that to me is the greatest Giant game ever played. And I remember when Matt Barr was going to kick that field goal, Harinam and I were hiding behind his couch. We couldn't look. And his wife came in and said, "What are you doing?" I said, "Oh, I lost the contact." Um,
I thought
uh,
she said, "What inning is it in?"
anyway, uh, so that brings us up to the point where Harinam, how we met and how we started to develop our friendship.
And one thing you say is interesting is that you always kind of bring it back to the years you were in college, and it's kind of interesting in retrospect. Now how old are you now?
I just turned 65.
Yeah, well, you're a
I
Medicare.
get a free bus pass.
Yeah.
I've been waiting for that for 65 years.
Hey, but I get into the museums at half price. That's, um, I'm going to be 74 in March. He's 65,
You look
and
fantastic.
yeah, it's the makeup. It's the cosmetics that are preserving me. But you said something interesting is that we both were actually, ironically, we were both raised on Long Island. I was born in Brooklyn. I don't know if you were born in Long Island, but I was born in Brooklyn,
Well,
raised in Long Island. You were raised in Long Island.
my family's
And,
from Rockaway, but I grew up on Long Island.
so much I was raised in one of the word actually, to talk about being raised in Long Island and the Giants, is that one of the most humiliating times of my life being a Giant fan. And I think it's one reason you really hate like the Seahawks and the 49ers, and we both don't like the people in our division, the Eagles and the Cowboys. But
I don't hate the Seahawks. I resented them because they were always on TV.
not personal.
The 49ers I hate
It's personal.
because I'm immature and and I haven't been able to get past our competitions with them in the 80s.
No.
That's you continue, please. Sorry.
Yeah, but you don't have the negativity I have towards the Jets.
I do not.
Because I don't know that you went through what I had to go through, because I was in high school and I was a huge Giant fan. I got season tickets. The Giants were the most important thing in my life. And that was when the Jets won the Super Bowl. And that was probably the worst day for me, seeing the Jets when the Giants going down. And I was in high school, and they were talking, getting back to Long Island, is that everyone, and all my friends are sports fans, but virtually all of them were Jets fans, Mets fans and Jets fans. I was a Yankee fan and a Giants fan. And to have the Jets win the Super Bowl just made it 10 times harder of what the Giants were going through in the 60s. And so I've kind of kept that. And it's again my own immaturity. I'm holding on to that pain that I felt the day I had to go back to school after the Jets won the Super Bowl. I took it personally, and I'm 74. I still haven't got over it. So, right, you know what I'm talking about. Everybody there knows what I'm talking.
Actually, I have a ridiculous quick story. On the day the Jets won the Super Bowl, I remember listening to the game on the radio. I was like 8, 7 or 8 or somewhere around there. And we were, and first of all, we were shocked that the Jets were winning. But the really odd thing about it is we were skiing on Long Island. Back then, there was a place called Bald Hill.
Really? I
It
didn't
had
know
about
that.
200 feet of vertical. It's still there. Actually, I went to a
Really?
concert there not long ago, but we were driving home from our ski trip on that on Long Island,
Your ski trip on Long Island.
listening to the end of that game,
Oh
and
my
and
God.
just in shock because my parents thought Namath was such a braggart and and couldn't stand him because of
Yeah.
that, because of his the way he was, and and as a little kid, of course, you love that. I mean,
See,
hey, look at this
well,
guy. Looks like he's having fun. You know,
yeah. Well, oddly
but
enough, that's one thing me and your parents could have bonded on back then. So
okay.
I didn't like him either. So anyhow, so like it's kind of, I guess the ironic point is that college had such a go away college had such an effect on our respective lives is that New York in general, maybe Long Island obviously less, is such a diverse cosmopolitan place, one of the most in the world. But you could actually, I mean, me and you are probably evidence of you being born and raised in the New York metropolitan area and still live kind of a cloistered, sheltered life. So I didn't really know anything that's kind of outside my little world. Even living in New York, I really wasn't exposed to a lot of different. It's hard to believe that right now, but I was in the New York metropolitan area, and I actually wasn't exposed to a lot of different people, a lot of different ideas. And I went to the University of Maryland, and I'm sure my parents cursed the day they ever decided that was a good idea because I came back a different person. That's not what they had in mind. And I went away to university, and I was exposed to all these different kinds of people I never had met, all these different ideas, taking courses and all this stuff, and finding myself absolutely blew my mind, all the things that new ideas that I was exposed to. And I mean, again, that's when I'm 18 years old, and now, you could see I'm going to be 74, and you see I'm sitting here. I got a beard. I got a big turban on my head. And this is really kind of indirectly all a result of the new ideas that I was exposed to. I got interested in Eastern philosophy, and and I went to law school in New York. I went to St. John's, and well, by the time I was out of law school, I was doing yoga and meditation, things that people weren't doing back then, so I felt like kind of a pioneer, and to others probably a weirdo, but I was exploring really other ways of looking at the world, and then very in my 20s I became a Sikh. So so if you have a question, well, why is this guy wearing a turban and a beard? But I basically took on a religion that's from India, and the podcast's not about that. But if you have a curiosity why we're both wearing turbans, I have a traditional Sikh Nahang turban, and Kevin's wearing a New York Giants turban right now. So it's something like, but he's got to grow that beard,
Right.
right? But he's got it, and mine doesn't have a little beanie on top. But his has a nice little red beanie. But we're both in the same giant clan. We just kind of dress differently. But yeah, the college had a big influence, and then and even though I went to law school in New York, and I think me and Kevin had different experiences being in Oregon, for instance. Probably mine much more positive in some ways, but I went there. I think he went there basically because there was a job there waiting for him. I actually went to Oregon by choice, in that I had visited it while I was in law school, and I thought it was the most beautiful thing I ever saw in my life. It just blew my mind, and I was interested in kind of getting away from New York and getting yet another experience, and I started backpacking and mountain climbing and doing all the things that people do in Oregon that they don't do in Long Island. There's not a lot of mountain climbing in Long Island. There's not a lot of, there's not a lot of river rafting in Long Island. There's great things in Long Island, but there's no mountains to climb. And so that I did that. I was in Oregon for 30 years, and yeah, like Kevin was saying, there are very few Giant games on TV. Even in the 80s, that the Giants had the times you saw the Giants on national TV. Well, in the 80s, the Giants had, it's a long time ago, had really good teams, and when they were on national television actually a lot. So they weren't like the game locally, like Kevin was saying, but you would see, and they'd always have like Pat Summerall and John Madden doing the games, and they'd be like big games against the 49ers, the Bears, the Redskins, the Eagles. Those were on national TV. So probably the Giants were so good that probably half their games were actually on national TV. And so, but then when they weren't on national TV, I'm trying to somehow connect to it in alternative ways. But yeah, I met Kevin in one of those. I actually met him in a sports bar in Portland. And as Kevin says, this people right now, younger people don't know this, but that was like a really big new thing. I mean, they that didn't really start till like the late '80s, and then even then, kind of very in a primitive way. And now it is what today you can go in any city, any sports bar, and see every game. That's a non-issue. But back then we didn't have that, and we used to watch the games together. I was a practicing attorney in Portland, and Kevin was working for Intel. He was an executive in Intel, and we kind of got into each other's social circle a little bit, and as you'll see from the podcasts that come forward, uh and it gets into kind of what we're doing here too, is that the interesting thing is we both got uh, to know each other as being rabid New York Giant fans living in the outposts of Portland, Oregon. And there weren't a lot of I had a couple of other friends there who were that way, who I'm still in touch with, but that was very rare. And, but then as we got to know each other better, we realized, I'm speaking for myself here. I'm saying we, but I realized that, oh my God, this is like one of the few guys like me. This guy is like interested, and this is kind of my expression. He's interested in everything and everybody. Okay, and that's how I would describe myself. I'm a person who's interested in absolutely everything and absolutely everybody, so I've got a certain passion for living that kind of life, and because of some of the lifestyle I live, including being a spiritual teacher, I've been invited to travel just all over the world and meet all kinds of people. And Kevin's traveled all over the world, and Kevin also knows more about history than any person I've ever met. So I've learned a lot about history
Um,
from him,
I'm not
and
just a pretty face, Harinam.
yeah, right. Well, I would agree with that. You're not a pretty face. But no, but he's very, and I'm informed about a lot of things. So it's like we never are lacking something to talk about, because between the two of us, I think we've had wild experiences in this life. We're both married to women who are from other countries. We both can speak other languages. We both have had numerous roles in our life. He's like he's been a business executive in a basically a tech company that was just coming up strong when he was getting out of college. So he's been part of the whole technological revolution in the United States, and he's been an executive, and he's a golf pro. Okay. And so he's got a lot, he knows about history. So it's like you can talk about all kinds of things. My own life's been very interesting. And so yeah, like Kevin was saying before we were starting today, is we could talk for hours, because there's just so much to talk about. So one thing, and Kevin could give his insight into this, but my hope in this podcast is like, so there, anybody who'd want to jump on this, that there's no misunderstanding about what our intentions, our collective intentions are here, that there's no misunderstanding that the foundation of this podcast is the New York Football Giants, and that there's a lot of stuff. I mean, I listen to other people's podcasts. I listen to them. I watch the YouTube, and I actually listen and watch to a lot of them because they all have something different to offer. And yet, I think that we can offer something that the others don't. So, there's other podcasts. I put them in different categories. There's podcasts about the Giants that are predominantly about news. They're informing you what's going on with the team. So they know more than we do. Okay, we only hear what they say. So this is not like an informative, news-oriented podcast. There's other podcasts that are giving you, they're trying to kind of get into the weeds about, the Giants, they're in 11 formation. I wish they'd play more 12 formation, and they're playing a deep zone. I wish they'd bring the safeties more closer because that fits with their, okay. So I don't think either of us think that we know enough. We're not that smart. Okay. So we leave that to people who have more, either a higher opinion of themselves than we do, or that they actually have real knowledge. And I like going to that, but I'm not saying that I have a huge amount of knowledge, even if I did. This is not going to be about us trying to impress you with our football knowledge about the inside of the game. I don't think it will be. There's other podcasts, and you know which ones we're talking about because it's pretty obvious. There's other podcasts that I think you'd put more in the fandom, that they are more emotional, and they're talking as fans, not as experts, and they're sharing their angst and joys about the team. Okay, and I think we'll lean a little bit into that because I think that we're coming from it from a fan's point of view, just how we're feeling and what we're thinking about things, which is similar to other podcasts. But I think there's two things that we're hoping to bring that will be different than any other podcast. Okay, one is that Kevin is telling you that he started becoming aware of following the Giants in the mid or late 60s. Okay. 70s. I'm sorry. I started following the Giants in the late 50s. Okay. So I actually have been following the Giants since a number of their players did not even wear face masks. And some of the players in the league were playing two ways. Okay, so there was another and I'd gone through all. I've been following Giants football now. I'm 74, so I have followed Giants football for 65 years now. And a lot of the people who are doing the podcast, and bless them, I mean, they're doing a great job. But the reality is, old time football to them is Eli Manning. Okay, but that was like 50 years after I started following the Giants. So I have and Kevin, I think you're going to hear us talk a lot about the history of the Giants, and it'll be interspersed. We've seen games that were played before a lot of hopefully our viewers were even born. And so we've seen pieces of Giants football that run very deep. So I'm hoping that we make history of the Giants part of this, and to keep that alive. And I don't think you're going to hear that in a lot of other podcasts that will talk a lot about the 60s, 70s, but also what's happening today. And the other part of the podcast, and it goes back to the title of it, is that it's called Giant Conversations, meaning big, not only giant football, but they're big conversations. So I think that what we're really trying to get here is, well, the foundation is always going to be Giants football, but the hope is that we'll have the freedom to kind of bring people into other places, and physically and intellectually and psychologically, and talk about all kinds of things about life, because we've been so involved with the Giants, and the Giants has kind of been a kind of a fulcrum for a lot of our activity, that a lot of our experiences, even with Giant football, brings us to worldly and otherworldly places. So I think we're hoping to kind of bring you into this just by inviting you into what really, we're not here to teach you or tell you anything. We're more like inviting you into personal conversations so that you can kind of think and live vicariously through things that we've been through. Is that kind of fair to say?
Yeah, I think it is. Just a few fact checks. I was never an executive at Intel. I was a
Oh,
low
then you
level.
were lying. You were lying to
Uh,
me.
no, I mean I was a low level or mid manager. But I would never consider myself to be an executive. I was never terribly interested in work. To be honest with you, even when I did work, it just took up way too much of the time. I had many other interests. I didn't dislike it. I got to travel, which was good, and I always liked lunch. I was a big lunch guy, but it certainly doesn't define who I am, other than the people I met during this course. And the other thing is, it wasn't the '70s; it was the '60s. I started watching the Giants whenever Fran Tarkenton came around. He's the first guy I
67,
remember.
67,
Okay,
yeah.
'67, and I missed the first preseason game in '69 because my friends and I rode our bikes from Long Island to Woodstock, and so I missed that. I missed that weekend. I think I had my buddy Lofi on my handlebars uh, as we were driving up there. Uh, but that's the time frame uh, that that I became. I don't want to uh, grandize myself professionally, uh, uh, but I worked in Intel for 24 years. Got to go to a lot of different places. Uh, I was based in Oregon, but Oregon, it can be a bit dreary if you're not familiar with it. It has beautiful summers, but it has dark and wet
Rainy, rain, yeah.
other periods. So any opportunity I had to get to get out, just to get out of the workplace, just to get out of a cubicle or a laboratory and go somewhere, I took that. So I probably spent a year of my life in California and a half a year in Arizona and New Mexico. Also spent a fair amount of time in Israel because Intel had a factory there. That was fascinating. We could talk about that at some other time. And Ireland too. Spent a lot of time in Ireland. Have a lot of friends there. Uh, have a friend in every county, basically in Ireland, and just wonderful experiences. And I wanted to add one something. I know Harinam mentioned he went to the University of Maryland, and when I was in high school, uh, when I did get into the game, which wasn't all that often, I played tight end, and we were playing against Central Islip or East Islip, one of the ice slips. And one of the players on the opposite team was Mike Tice. I don't know
Oh,
if you
yeah.
remember him.
Oh, sure,
Him, but
he played for the,
yeah,
Vikings in Seattle, I think.
yeah, yeah. I don't know if our what whatever three viewers we might
Oh, he
have
played
know
for
who he is,
Maryland,
but
he played for Maryland
yeah,
too, I
no,
think.
he played for Maryland. That's why I brought it up. Yeah, he played
Yeah.
for Maryland, and he played professionally, and he was like gigantic compared to everybody else. He was a quarterback, but he was. I mean, it looked like Gulliver and the Lilliputians. I might have been his height, but I was 100 pounds lighter than him. And he played safety. And I remember being in the huddle saying, "Don't throw the ball to me. Don't throw the ball to me. I'm not getting hit by that guy." And by the way, your girlfriend's talking to some other guy up in the stands. This is the kind of things we would say. Uh, and then the next year, which I didn't play, but I think my high school played against Boomer Esiason, who also ended up going to Maryland
Mary
if
also a Terp, yeah.
memory serves. So
Yes.
just a little house, house cleaning there and make sure
Well, a lot of people,
the
a lot of people from
fact.
Long Island, at least when I was younger, a lot of people from Long Island would go to Maryland. An amazing amount of
Yeah,
people.
yeah, yeah,
I don't know if it's
uh,
true anymore, but it was like Long Island South, right?
yeah. So and just talk. We're gonna talk. I'm sure much more about our experiences with the Giants and moving forward, but just the kind of the Reader's Digest version. So after I was able to, be with my father for the two Super Bowls in the '80s. The first one in against Denver, which was to me it was. I never thought the Giants were going to lose that game, and it was more of the games leading up to that were of great excitement to me. Of course, to have the trophy in your hands was wonderful, and now you've you have you have credibility and have something they can't take away from you. And of course, the game in '90 against Buffalo was just one of the great
Yeah.
football games. Of course, I'm biased because the Giants are in the game, but just that was a
Yeah, it was
tremendous football game.
yeah,
I mean, just
as a football
fan,
fan, yeah, that was
just fantastic.
yeah.
And then the other two Super Bowls. So after I left Oregon, I transferred with Intel to Boston, and I've been living in Boston ever since.
Right,
So I live in
right.
Boston now. That's why I had the hat on because it was 3 degrees this morning.
Uh,
Uh, but you know, I you still have my family house on Long Island, so I go back and forth. I'm a frequent floater on the ferry from Bridgeport to Portia. But I was able. I actually went to the Giants, the first Giants Super Bowl against the Patriots, and I wasn't going to go. Uh, because for a number of reasons, but mostly I was scared they were going to lose, and I was actually convinced to go by my wife. And we'll talk about our wives later. But my wife's from Istanbul, and she doesn't. She never saw a football played before, and she doesn't understand football. She says, "Why are they pushing each other?" It's like being on the subway, you know. Uh, but she said, "Oh, they're playing in the championship game. Oh, you have to go. You should go." And she was the one that actually convinced me to go. And I harbor no rancor at all to the Patriots. I mean, I wasn't I didn't grow up here. I don't. I mean, I I like the Patriots. I root for them. I mean, they're fine. But it was the undefeated team, and it was my opportunity to go. And I didn't have tickets. And this could be a long story. I don't want it to be, but I ended up meeting Willie Lanier on the plane flying down. And if most people probably wouldn't know who he was, but he's
I saw him play. I saw him play.
A
A
Hall of Fame
great player.
Hall of
Yeah,
Fame
great player.
linebacker from the Chiefs. What a nice guy, bright guy. He was starting up businesses and just a wonderful guy. We had dinner with him twice while we were down there. I mean, lovely guy. And what I didn't know at the time was that each Hall of Famer gets 4 tickets to the Super Bowl. At least they did then. And so Willie was gracious enough to query, his other Hall of Fame uh, brethren, and he got us tickets. And me and my friend Philip, who's an Irish guy I'm not sure I'd ever been to a football game before, but a sports lover. I remember I just went to a game I went to see Tottenham versus Aston Villa in London 10 days ago with him. So he's a big sports fan. And Willie got us tickets. I think they were $1,100. It was $700 face value. And you know, the best the best $1,100 you could ever possibly imagine spent. Just fabulous. So and again, beating the Patriots again. I don't harbor any ill will towards the Patriots. I love the Patriots. They let us beat them in the Super Bowl twice. So and they're playing this weekend, and I wish them well. They're a well run franchise. I respect them, and but and there's so many more details in between, which we'll probably cover in other episodes.
Mhm.
But if it's appropriate, Harinam, I'll just speak a little bit now about the hiring of our new coach, if that's
Yeah.
okay. I
Well,
know we skipped.
let me just you know what? I'll tell my story another time. I think that for time's sake, it's good that we I agree with you. Let's talk about the new coach. We got 10 or 15 minutes to do that. That's we normally would have probably talking the very first thing going forward about that. But, this is our first episode. So I think it is good that we kind of introduced ourselves and kind of created some kind of resonance with people who happen to trip over and see us, that we're part of the tribe here, the Giants tribe here.
Yeah.
And so
And
having got that
I,
aside, yeah, I think it's very momentous time in the Giants' history this last week. So what do you think about all this?
well, I feel like I can breathe. It's the way I'd sum it up, right? I mean, you talked before about apathy, and that is a frightening thing to feel for something that you've been so connected to. And I know it's only a game, and I don't want to be overly dramatic, but watching games the last 3 seasons like it was a preseason game. I mean, and for the last, and by the way, there's, yeah, there's, uh, you can't develop, a martyr moniker for 12 years of shitty football when your team's won 4 Super Bowls and 4 other NFL championships. Right? So I'm not in that space at all. Okay, but you don't want to feel apathetic, and they just taken. And again, we'll go into this in more detail in other episodes, but I feel like I can breathe now. Uh, I feel like I I don't need to I don't need to involve myself in the minutia. I feel like this guy is a great person and a great football person, a- and he inspires confidence. As a season ticket holder, he sent a message out, which again was was very significant to me. I don't ever remember a coach sending out a message to the fan base, and this guy seemed very genuine, very respectful of the Giant fan, which he. I mean, and we're not unique. I mean, I'm sure there's fans just like us for every team and every sport, but we happen to be affiliated with this team, and I just feel like I said, I can breathe again. I can relax. I know that we're in good hands. That doesn't pretend any success, uh, 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 or doesn't guarantee success. But I know, or I feel that the Giants are going to be respected again, and I just want to share one quick experience. Again, going back to being petty and uh, also immature, still with my free bus pass at 65. Uh, I still have lasting rancor for the 49ers because it's just a team I can't stand. And I have lots of 49er friends who are great people. It's got nothing to do with that. This is my own immaturity, right? Because we struck. I mean, we had such a rivalry with them in the '80s, and we really did well against them in the big picture of things, right? I
Sure,
mean,
very
but
probably better
still,
than anybody
but
else.
that,
Yeah.
there was just something about them I couldn't stand. Back then they were just arrogant, uh, uh, something, and again they were great, one of the best football teams of all time, and great organization, always good, they're tremendous. But I went to a game this year, and the new stadium, and we can talk about the new stadium and the old stadium on another podcast, but it's just not the same experience. And I think with Jim Harbaugh, that'll start to recover.
Hmm.
Back in the old stadium, we knew everyone in our section, right? I mean, I'm
Yes.
still friends with people in our section. I don't
Yeah.
know a single person in my section in the new
Yeah.
stadium, and every week there's a different person sitting next to
Well,
me.
this also
And
has been the whole StubHub uh,
yeah,
effect,
but but
but
but but so I
used to
went
be,
to the
yeah, it used to be family, right?
and I went to the Giants played the 49ers this year, and I went to that game, and there was just an absolute mob of 49er fans. I don't know where they came from. I know it's a popular team, but so were the Giants, right? And that's there was so many 49er fans, and I met some of them that were from California, and good for them, man. And I welcomed them, had a good chat with them. But there's other fans, from the local area, and that's their absolute right. They can do whatever they like, and I'm not blaming them. Why would I blame them? They came to root on their team. But the fact that the organization had got to the point where that was the atmosphere at that game, where the Giants had to take time out because they couldn't hear on offense. That was the first time I could ever remember saying, "Am I going to get my season tickets again?" And that again, we went through all the connections that we have with the team. That is, I don't want to be over dramatic. It's not frightening, but it's disappointing at the very least. And now with Jim Harbaugh, I don't feel that way, and I don't think we're going to have to feel that way.
Well, I think that your what you just expressed, I I totally agree with it, but I think that probably 95% of the people who consider themselves rabid Giant fans would say exactly what you said in their own way of saying it. Is that kind of nails it? Is that um, you know, before the last 12 years, you're trying to jump on every piece of minutia to try to feed, and now it's kind of like, and I guess the reason you're doing it is that you don't really trust the people running the operation. Okay. And so you're going to personally analyze it and be like the GM yourself. But now it does feel like for the first time, they have somebody in there that that is competent, actually. Okay. And they know what they're doing. And you figure, okay, that guy knows more than I do. I just trust him. So it's not even so much agreement as it's trust. And on one of the other podcasts, I always listen to this, is that one of the guys, I remember, I'm not going to say what it was, but one of these podcasts we're referring to, the host said that the major strategy that the Giants have been running on for the last 10 years is hope. And now I don't feel it's, but I totally get that. It's like their strategy is hope, but now I think that what I'm feeling is trust, that there's trust in somebody, not hoping it's going to work out, but that they actually trust that it's going to work out. And I haven't felt that in a long time. And I think that the people who are hiring this guy are not, their strategy isn't hope. They actually have somebody that they trust with the operation. And at this point, anything could happen. I remember when they had the famous Joe Judge interview, and the guy put on, that was the height of actually his career as the coach, was the introductory speech, because he had this.
It was the only highlight.
That's right. So he had this fiery speech, and it was so good. I remember it was so good that I'm feeling, wow, he's going to turn this around. This is amazing. But it wasn't, if I look back on my emotion listening to it, I was buying into the hope that this guy who had never been a head coach was going to magically turn this team around, but there was no evidence to prove it, but he gave such a great speech that I was kind of seduced into this. And then with Harbaugh, he didn't even have to give a speech for me. His body of work is enough for me to trust him. And so
Of course, he has credibility.
That's right.
He's
actually done it.
Evidence. There's empirical evidence that this guy knows what he's doing.
And not maybe that he's going to win a championship every year or even a championship at all, but that they'll actually be competitive. And it gets into this other thing that for him, and the coach getting back to, the fact that we have been around this team for so long, actually through various epics of football, that eras of football. So I'm going back to when they were playing. I mean, I followed the Giants when they were playing in Yankee Stadium on dirt fields and this frozen dirt fields in December. And now, I've been through many. I've been through 65 iterations of this team and football. You've been through almost as many. And so I think that probably, while we're still coherent here, that we just have like a memory base that goes back so much farther. And so we've seen a lot come and go. And I think both of us kind of have a certain view of what's the real problem with a team, what's the real strength in the team. And one thing that's really kind of been a real lesson for me, especially in the last 15 years, is that, um, you know, it's the players that bring the butts into the stadium and they're making the big money. But you got to have a great coach. You can't win without coaching. And the Giants basically have not been a well-coached team. And I don't even know whether, people are always assuming their roster sucks, and it may suck, but I'm not knowledgeable enough a lot of times to know that, because a lot of a team's success is its chemistry, and how the players play together. So you can have a very talented roster, but they just don't play as a team. They don't play well. You can have teams, we just watched in college football, Indiana win the championship. They're arguably one of the best college football teams in history. They're a phenomenal college football team. And what people don't understand is that if you looked at their recruiting, to their actual the recruitment of their players, they were like something like the 80th or 85th rated team far as the anticipated quality of their roster based on where they were recruited. They have most of the guys even though they used the portal, they got from James Madison. They have actually very few high echelon players on their team, and yet the coach was able to bring out the best of them. There's other teams, I'm an Oregon fan, and I'm a Big Duck fan, and they had like the second or third best, most talented teams by most measurements, and they got their asses kicked by a team that had the 80th or 85th best roster, but they had the best coaching. And so over the years, it's questionable about the player acquisitions of the Giants in the last 15 years, but we'll never know, because to me, they're not a well-coached team. And so they don't know what they're doing. And this guy who they just got, they may not win the Super Bowl, but I believe they'll be a well-coached team. And we haven't seen that in a long time.
Yeah. And he also recognizes uh, how we feel, how you and I feel. Uh, and you could see that in his tone, and the respect he shows for the organization and the fans, which I appreciate that. I mean, I yeah, you just want to feel some sense of pride for your team, even if they're not great. I mean, they play hard, whatever. I always admired the way Baltimore played.
Oh yeah,
Kind
me
of
too.
old school. Big
No, they
offensive
play.
line, big defensive line. I mean, you were going to be in the cold tub after that game, and I'm very happy to have that mentality come to the Jersey Swamp.
Well, this again goes back to some of our past, is that, a lot of people, their memory of Giants being successful with the two most recent Super Bowls. We actually saw them in the three Super Bowls before that, especially the first two. And we saw a certain brand of football. And That's actually, and when I started following the Giants in the late 50s and early 60s, that's the kind of football they were playing even back then. And so naturally, I'm not surprised that the two of us really enjoy watching the Ravens because that's like old time Giant football. And
Yeah,
I think that is always winning football. It doesn't matter what year you're in. It's basically you stop the other team and you basically have the strategy to score enough points because you trust your defense. And the Giants have always
mm,
won championships on defense, and it's been humiliating what they've been throwing out on the field the
yeah,
last 15 years.
yeah. And there's very few teams in the league that y- that their ethos is defense, and their first thing you think about is when you think about that team is defense. Right, the Giants were always one of those teams, and you always had a chance. And Baltimore was one of those teams, and Chicago is one of those teams
Mm,
where you always. But there's not many of them that you think. First thing is to think about defense, and that's within
mm.
the spirit of the fan base, right? I mean, even if they lose, if they're playing hard and and you can see that there's genuine effort, uh, that's enough. I don't know to satisfy, but at least to mollify the crowd uh, uh, for the time being.
Yeah, and this year, I think some of the games just blew my mind. But they lost so many heartbreaking games at the end of the game. Although football has really changed since we started because now it's looking more like basketball. It looks like they played 58 minutes just to set up the game for the last 2 minutes. It wasn't like that. That's a big change in the game. But the Giants always seem to lose those games instead of win those games, but they're in a position to win them. And I think that that is really a reflection of coaching too. I think I kind of agree with Harbaugh, and it'll be interesting to see going forward because I actually put a lot of the blame on the general manager, and I thought some of the draft picks that he made are mind-boggling. Turned out mind-boggling bad, and I thought maybe it was both, but management put the blame on the coach, and time will tell whether they're correct because it seems that the coach is satisfied with the roster he's working with. Otherwise, he probably wouldn't have come here. And they were good enough to win a lot of games before the season started. Everybody agreed they had the hardest schedule in the league, and they played a lot of they played look at a lot of the teams they played went very far in the playoffs, and they were down where they lost. They were leading the game like with 2 minutes to go. So they're not they're not shit.
Well,
They
that,
have to
that
be good enough that they're playing these teams tooth and nail for 58 minutes.
well, they're not bereft of talent, and that's what the I read somewhere. Harbaugh's father mentioned that to him. Said Harbaugh's father uh, re- studied the Giants and told his son, "This team has talent." I mean, what a football family that is, right? I mean, boy.
And we've had so,
So
in particular, you look even on your knowledge of football over the last 10 years, they have generally, their defense has been horrible. And they've had good players. And look, you got guys like Leonard Marsh, I like Leonard Williams and Love were playing in the championship game, and they're all pros. Okay. And you had these
yeah,
guys in your house, and they played well for you, but they played better elsewhere.
yeah. I mean, I know that there's a trail of dubious decisions, probably with every team there is, but we're close to the Giants, so we we tend to focus on that, and probably more so the Giants than other teams because you can see what the results have been. But
Well,
very, very comfortable with, very thankful that we have this coach. He's also a gentleman, man. And he's a
mm,
guy that you feel comfortable around. You feel like he's not
mhm.
bullshitting.
Yeah. No,
You know,
no,
that he that
I'm
which
we're all,
and he has the credential, and he
he has the
has
good,
plenty of
right,
empirical evidence to suggest he knows what he's doing.
right. He's done
So,
this before. He's done this before
and
successfully,
yeah,
you know,
and
so
right, and
I,
football's a lot of it's all timing, right? I mean, it's just lucky. I mean, think about Kansas City, how lucky they were, right? I mean, it just so happened they got Andy Reid at the moment that their their quarterback, who was I believe was sitting behind another guy, came to prominence. I mean, that's part of that's luck.
yeah.
I mean, you can't plan for everything,
Yep.
and having hard. You know, I remember when this coaching started. No, you know, and they fired him. Again, like all all the names that were coming up were aren't very satisfying. And then Stefanski got fired. Like, oh well, he's pretty good. You know, most of the talk before that was about the Green Bay's old coach. You know, who could be a good coach? I'm nothing against him. But then Stefanski came up and said, "Oh, this is a better option." You know, and then you know we're watching the Steelers and
I know.
and and
I was rooting for that I was rooting for that guy to miss the field goal because I really felt I going, please miss this field goal because I thought for sure that he was going to be fired and the Giants would have a good shot at him. Just knowing how he was, I figured the Giants would be the kind of team he'd want to coach. And now I'm like 3, 4 steps removed from reality, but it actually did happen. It all
yeah,
happened.
and then as soon as it happened and he got fired, you said to yourself, "This is the Giants' chance."
Yeah, well,
Right now, do they have the organizational skill, uh, moxie, whatever, to get this guy in house? And they did. And you know, I
yeah.
think to some extent the organization sold itself. But you know, you still got to be convinced,
No, they did it. They
and
did what
you
they.
got to give them a lot of credit. And
Yeah.
I think you know that there's a lot to be said for intransigence, right? I mean, Tom Conklin was about to be run out of town, and you know he changed his way of thinking, and I think this could be the Giants' brasses intransigent breaking moment, right? That we'll see. They may have a lot much more power to this coach than they ever have to any coach because they know what they've been doing for the past 15 years hasn't worked, and that's a hard thing to
Hmm.
and that's a hard thing to do. And then so we'll see.
They did it. You know, you being an X and O's guy, um, that I'm sure you're not going to give the credit to one individual's power of prayer, but God be my witness when they were lining up for that field goal. I'm praying to God for that thing to go wide right.
Whatever
So
works.
it did. It worked. It worked.
What-
It's
what-
tried and proven. But I like to feel like I had a part in the hiring as well.
yeah,
So
I think you did. I think you did.
thank you. That means a lot. So anyhow, uh, I think we're probably over what we even planned to do here, as far as length. But I hope that there are people who stayed on and felt this compelling enough to stay with us. Probably our future episodes will be significantly shorter, and we'll do shorts too. But we wanted to introduce ourselves, give a little background about how we got here, and then of course we ended talking about John Harbaugh. So. Probably in the future, Giants football and who knows what. And please, we always have to mention this. Please, on YouTube, please like and subscribe and let your friends know about it, so we can grow a community of fans as rabid as we are, and hope that you make the journey with us. And we'll also be on. The audio platforms like Spotify and Apple and all that. And so please like that and Again, tell your friends about us, and probably in the off season here, we haven't decided yet, but maybe once or twice a month in the off season, and then when the season starts, we'll probably do every week. So, anything you'd like to add, buddy?
Yeah, just that, Harinam is the inspiration and motivation and set this all up, did all, you know, and really did everything. He's Johnny Carson. I'm Ed McMahon when it comes to this podcast. So I just want to acknowledge and thank you for. We talked about doing this for a long time, so I want to
Here
acknowledge
we
and
are.
thank
Here
you
we are.
for
Here we are.
being the driving force behind it.
And I really enjoy that analogy with McMahon and Johnny Carson. I'm very much willing to take the role of Johnny Carson. I'm very willing to give you the role of Ed McMahon, and I can die in peace with that analogy. And we'll see everybody in the next episode. Thanks for being with us. And go Giants.
Go Giants.